time again, I see that people have basically grown their business into a business they don't like anymore. They no longer do any of what they enjoy. Instead, they manage a group of people doing what they used to like. Management of people, being a salesperson, doing all these things is a different skill set. Hello and welcome to the Service-Based Business Society podcast. I am your host, Tiffany Ann Botcher. If you are ready to scale your success, grow your business, and live that entrepreneurial life, click subscribe because we're about to get started. Hey guys, and welcome back to another episode, the very first episode of 2025. Excited to be back in the studio because Christmas is over. The holidays are over. New Year's resolutions, if that is your jam, have begun, and it's time. I want to encourage you to think on a bigger scale. I know I finished it up 2024 saying, do big things, but it's that reminder. It's that reminder that it doesn't really matter what happened over the holidays. It doesn't really matter if you put your feet up and you didn't do a whole lot. It doesn't matter if you did the opposite and you crushed it. January is like a fresh start. January and September are, to me, the two biggest times for ultimately that fresh, clean slate. So if there was something in your business that you were like, I will do that at one point in the future, now is the time. Now is the future. Welcome to 2025. The funny thing is, I remember Y2K. I graduated grade 7, if that's a thing, class of 00. I'm in Canada, and so grade 7, and not in all parts of Canada, but where I am, grade 7 is when you go off to high school. Grade 7 is the last year of elementary school. Grade 8, you go off to the high school. It was Y2K. The world was going to end. The world did not end. But now that was 25 years ago. It's the funny things that my kids ask, like, how long have you been driving? And a while now. It's crazy how fast time goes. It truly is. And I feel like the holidays flew by, even though we did significantly less than we typically do. And I think that was kind of a common theme this year from a lot of different people I spoke to. Maybe that wasn't your experience, but it's really that I feel like finally, for myself anyway, there is this value of doing less. But I want to share a funny story because there was a day in the holidays where we had nothing. So we have a digital calendar in the kitchen. If you don't have one of these, I highly recommend you do it if you manage multiple calendars. So each of my kids has their own Google Calendar. My husband has his, I have mine, and it all gets displayed on this beautiful digital calendar. Anyone who tells me that their paper calendar is their jam, I can't, because the paper calendar falls out of date faster than I could write it down. Do I like writing on paper? Yes. Do I use paper notebooks? Yes. Do I think that in 2025 we should be using a paper calendar? I do not. I believe that there's this skylight calendar. That's not the one that we have, but they were at Costco recently, I saw. So that can be an option. But I highly recommend if organization is the thing for you in 2025, that is the way to go. Back to the calendar though. So our calendar doesn't actually display a day in the weekly view if there's nothing on it. It doesn't really happen at our house very often because, we have 5 people with 5 busy calendars. And so over the holidays, we actually had a day with nothing on it. It was very stressful. And I think you might think, what do you mean? We are so accustomed to doing things all the time that the thought of having nothing to do was truly strange. And I spent most of the day wondering what I should be doing with the time, stressing about wasting this time that I don't normally have. Now, caveat, it was just after Christmas. I had already put all the Christmas decorations away. I was caught up on laundry. The house was clean. I had the day off work and was really working hard to not go do work. The kids were all doing their thing. I think, one was at a friend's, other ones were maybe playing on the computer, chatting with their friends. One was, my littlest was at his grandparents for a sleepover. And it was like, what do I do with this time? Absolutely mind-blowing. My husband was like, this is what we want. We want downtime. And I was like, I don't find this relaxing. If this is what we're shooting for, that's not it for me. It was this very strange feeling. So I'm curious if you enjoy that downtime and what do you do with it? So a long time ago, we had a Facebook group. You've heard me talk about how I didn't really love having a Facebook group for the podcast, but we now have an Instagram page. So we have LinkedIn page, we have an Instagram page, and we have a Facebook page. These are places that you can reach out, message. So if I'm asking questions on the podcast, if you have some feedback, if you have some things to share, if you have a question that maybe you'd like answered on the podcast, we have a future Q&A episode coming up before the end of the season. So maybe you have a question that you'd like to ask anonymously about running your business, managing your business, how to fix something. What would you do in that situation? You can drop us a question, LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook. You can also leave a comment on Spotify. Spotify, we are now a part of the Spotify creator group. Very cool. And so that means we're actually sharing videos now on Spotify. Maybe new to us. This is one of those things that I never know how new something is. It's new to us. It's new to the Service-Based Business Society podcast. So we share videos on YouTube. Another great place that you can obviously not send us a private message, but you can comment on any of our videos on YouTube, any other social platform. And we really do. We read those comments. We use them when we're planning future episodes. And so I'm curious, because I truly do not know the answer to this question. What do you do with that time? So my husband says, I need a hobby. And I think I don't typically have time for a hobby, though, not outside the life that I already have. So I'm curious, if you either have a part-time-ish hobby, because my thing is, if I'm going to get started on something, then I'm going to want to keep going on that, I have this fantasy of maybe one day playing that farming simulator game. My littlest likes this farming. I think that might be fun. I think I might enjoy that. But that looks like a big commitment. Like, that is not something that I'm going to do for a couple hours and then never do it again, because I will be thinking about it. So come chat, hang out with us on one of the social platforms and share, what do you do with your downtime? Some of us say just put your feet up, watch a TV show. I did do a little of that. But we don't have a lot of shows at Christmas time. Like, the shows all stop. And I don't typically watch a lot of television, so I don't have a lot of series that I follow. Anyway, on with the show. Enough asking about the downtime, because it's 2025. We've already talked about the fact that you should have your budget. We've already talked about the fact that your book should be caught up to date. We've already talked about all of these different pieces as part of season 4. Now it's 2025. What are we going to talk about next? One of the things that comes up for me often, and I see it in a lot of consults, I see it in books that we're reviewing, either from a profitability standpoint, this is the big one, or, we're doing some kind of analysis on the books. So, and if you're not aware, one of the things that I offer as a service is a profit analysis call. A lot of times, things are miscategorized, misrecorded, or being spent incorrectly. Perhaps the revenue is not being realized the right way. All of these different types of things that I specialize in I offer in a profit analysis call. The goal is to, of course, make sure that your money is going into your pocket. More profit is always best. So, we're looking and we're doing some of these calls, but one of the things that comes up often is business owners say, my business doesn't pay me enough. I haven't gotten a raise in 2 years. I've never gotten a raise. My business barely pays me. These are all things that I hear often. And then I crack open the books and I think, are we not talking about that discretionary spending? Are we not talking about it? Are we going to pretend that the elephant of discretionary spending is not hanging out here in the room? Guys, I'm not going to say don't have discretionary spending. One of the great things about being a business owner, CRA, IRS, plug your ears, is that a lot of times we can find ways for our businesses to pay for things that ultimately are similar to us earning compensation. Perhaps it's something you use for business and personal. Now, this is where I'm going to, dabble and say there is no right or wrong answer here. In the real world, some of these pieces are a little bit gray area, and I don't agree with all of them. But I'm going to tell you what I see when I crack open the books. Amazon, your business does not need Amazon deliveries every day. There's very few businesses that require this. So when you just have Amazon and Amazon and Amazon and Amazon and Uber Eats and Starbucks and the gym and all these things, and you're calling these business expenses. And then you say, my business doesn't pay me. It does. It's just not paying you the way that you think. It's not coming in a paycheck. So, number one, if you are mixing your personal and business funds all together in a big money soup, 2025 is the year that you stop doing that. Number one, you're going to pay more to your bookkeeper to sort that out. Because ultimately, someone has to decide if it's business or personal. And if it's all on the business card, they still have to record all those personal transactions. They just have to say it's personal. It's personal. So they still have to do something with it, which takes time. Time is money. So that's one piece. Even worse is when people are mixing business and personal on the same receipts. They went to the grocery store, maybe 85% of it is personal, but that bottle of cleaner and that mop, that's for the office. Now, someone's having to read those receipts, go through, could it be business, could it be personal? Guys, this takes so much time. So much time. If you like your bookkeeper, please stop doing that to them. Guys, take some money and transfer it to your personal account and spend it however you wish. Do what you want with it. You want to take it to the casino? You want to take it to the racetrack? You want to take it to Amazon? Do what you like. But your bookkeeper doesn't need to go through all of those receipts. I can tell you in the many years of doing accounting, I have seen some things on receipts. I don't want to see them. Neither does your bookkeeper. But here's the thing. You're also paying that person to go through all of those items. So a couple tips. Transfer money to your personal account. Now, as part of your tax strategy, you should know how you're being paid. Now, if you're in, and I'm not going to dive into all the different options because Canada, US, different parts of the world, all very different, but you should have a strategy and a plan as to how you're taking money out of your business, putting it in your pocket, and keeping the profits. We're reducing taxes, guys. We want to make sure that we're not giving all of our profits to the government. Because at the end of the day, if your business earns about 10%, your payment processor is somewhere between 2 and 3%. Now you're giving, a certain percentage to the government. Like at the end of it, guys, it's just cutting into your piece of your pie. So have a strategy on how you're going to take your money out. Take it out and spend it how you wish. That doesn't mean there will be no discretionary spending, because ultimately, sometimes putting some of those expenses through your business is a way to get those money pre-tax. You don't want to take that money out, pay tax on it, and then spend it. If your business can take that expense. But here's where it complicates things. You have to know how much money, ballpark, you're running through your business that is actually part of your compensation. Because your business doesn't really, not that we would say, but your business doesn't really need that in order to actually run. It's discretionary. These are the expenses you're running through your business. Every business owner runs something through at one point or another. Maybe it's something that you accidentally, picked up the wrong card, whatever. I'm just saying, whether you do it, whether you don't do it, whether you do it a lot, whether you do it a little, you must remember that you're doing it. You must remember that some of those pieces are part of your compensation. So maybe your business only pays you $8,000 a month. Maybe your business only pays you $2,000 a month. But if you drive a vehicle and your business pays the payment, if it pays for the maintenance, if it pays for the fuel, if it does any of these things, that is a perk. That is a discretionary piece of your employment. Now, different types of businesses have different ways of having those business expenses. So in some places and some business structures, you get paid a certain amount of kilometers, certain amount of cents per kilometer, certain amount of cents per mile that you drive. That's a little different. And I'm not talking about that. P.S. If you are that type of business, now is the perfect time of year to go write down the mileage on your odometer, because you're going to need it at the end of the next year for your taxes. Guys, I'm not here to judge. I'm not here to tell you what you should and shouldn't run through your business. I'm going to let you deal with your professional on that. But I just want to say, don't tell me that your business isn't paying you when it's paying for your ridiculous Amazon habit. I see it. I see you, Amazon shoppers. It's just the way it goes. And so if you are looking to improve your business profitability, the other piece to that, kind of piece number 2, is that any of that discretionary spending, any of those other kind of transactions, they change your numbers. And now if you have a giant business, if you're doing $1 million a month and you have, $1,500 worth of discretionary spending, it's kind of washed in. You're not really going to see it. If your business is doing $3,000 a month and you have $1,500 worth of discretionary spending, guys, it shows up. Okay, so let's be reasonable. Let's remember what we're doing. You know what I mean? Let's make sure that we're factoring that in when we're planning our budget, when we're doing our profitability. You don't want your entire business budget to be based without discretionary spending and then miss your budget targets every single month because, well, you just didn't plan for that. So lots of different pieces here, but I see it over and over again. And it's why we're talking about it today, because a lot of times, although your business hasn't given you a formal raise, you have managed to wash in more and more discretionary spending as your business has grown. Perhaps now your business pays for an office/residential house cleaner. Perhaps now you have a vehicle through your business. Perhaps now your, vehicle has had multiple, maintenance and this, that. There's all these different pieces, guys. I just need you to remember as you're budgeting, remember as you're telling me that your business has never given you a raise, because you might be just getting your raise through some loosey-goosey spending. So back to us transferring money out of the business. So a couple things, we talked about talking with your professional about how to pull money out of your business and reduce taxes. So whether you're an LLC or an S Corp or a C Corp in the US, whether you're a sole proprietor or a corporation in Canada, all of these different options similar around the world, there are different ways, there are different compensation pieces. But what I want you to remember is that making any big changes right at the end of the year will have more tax consequences from a cash flow perspective. So, you can, at the very end of the year in the US, you can be an LLC who elects to file as an S Corp. Now, a lot of people say you should file as an S Corp. You definitely should. It'll save you taxes. It may under certain circumstances, but it may not under other circumstances. Do not listen to generic blanket tax advice. Little tip for 2025. But what can happen is you can be an LLC all year and then you can elect to file as an S Corp. However, you're going to owe a whole lot of payroll tax right at the end of the year. It's going to hurt. Get talking to your tax professional early on in the year, perhaps with your budget. Say, this is what I'm looking to do this year. Am I on a good plan? Good to check in with the middle of the year. Good to check in at the end of the year. Say, hey, this is what's going on. This is what we're seeing. We had all these plans. By the way, the year's tanking. We're not doing any of that. It's never mind. Could say, oh my goodness, we're tripling the targets. I'm rolling in the cash. I'm taking all the money and I'm taking it. I'm taking it. You don't want to make, it's like, well, had you done it this way, it would have saved you thousands. No one likes that. No one likes to think, gosh, I paid way too much to the government had I just been a little more organized. So if you've never had a tax strategy before, 2025 is the year that you should do it. One of the pieces that is required for tax strategy, one of the pieces that I often talk to during a bookkeeping sales call, is that having your numbers up to date allows you to know where you're at and also share that information. So recently I was on a call with someone who is part of our services. And I said, when do you typically meet with your accountant for your tax strategy meeting? She said, honestly, I've never done that before. And through kind of talking, it became clear that this year, because she was now on an ongoing bookkeeping service, she knew exactly where her numbers were. She could have that discussion. Previous years, she would wait until the very, weeks before the tax deadline, a year and a half from now, and then say, here's all my stuff. At that point, your professional can't do anything. They can't change anything. It is what it is. Whatever you bring them is what they brought. There's no planning. There's no strategy. So this year, strategy, keep your profit in your pocket. One of the other pieces when we're talking about moving money out of your account. Now, if you're an S Corp or you're a corporation, Canada, US, and you're being paid on, through payroll and you're paying payroll taxes at the time you're being paid, that's one thing. But if you are pulling money out of your business as a sole proprietor, as an LLC, through dividends, all these types of things, you ultimately want to be keeping track of how much money you're pulling out. And one of the things that we often see that is hard to fix later is people are doing a lot of transfers these days. So back in the day, you used to write a check. It'd be easy to keep on your check stub. Hey, I wrote, a check for this much to this person. With bank transfers now, you get your bank statement and it's like, well, I transferred money out. I transferred money out. I transferred money out. One of the tips that I recommend, very actionable here, these are one of those actionable tips you should implement right away, is choose an arbitrary cents amount maybe it's 37. And every time that you transfer money to yourself, make sure it ends in the 37 cents. So you want 5,000, 37 cents. 1,000, 37 cents. 500, 37 cents. This can save you so much time. So much time. Because now you can look through your bank statements and very quickly identify that was a transfer to me, that was a transfer to me, that was a transfer to me, because they may as well be labeled. It makes it super straightforward. These are the kinds of things that you can implement that save you time, that ultimately didn't cost you any additional time. 2025 is the year that we are going to focus on being efficient, being profitable, keeping that profit in our pocket. And so any of those types of little things, I hate to call it a hack, it's more valuable than a hack, but in today's 2025 era, people love a good hack. So, it's the 37-cent hack, ultimately, that makes it so it's very straightforward. One of the things that we struggle with often if we're doing a historical cleanup of anyone's books is that there's a lot of transferring going on. Yes, you can log into the bank and look at payment history and stuff, but ultimately, depending on the bank, for usually about a year and a half. After that, it just says transfer. It just transferred, and you don't really know where it transferred to. I always laugh when a business owner can go through and go, yep, that's a vendor, that's a this, from 7 years ago. And I think that you're making an educated guess, ultimately, because the amounts are very close. I don't remember what I had for lunch last week. Never mind what I paid someone $1,200 for 7.5 years ago. Keep up with your books. So 2025, budget, strategy, plan. The numbers are never the fun part, unless you're a numbers nerd like I am. And, we don't often talk about it on the podcast. People always say, how do you talk about bookkeeping all the time on the podcast? How do you talk about accounting? How do you talk about taxes? And I said, we don't really. Ultimately, the Service-Based Business Society is a podcast that is for entrepreneurs. We talk about management. We talk about marketing. We talk about leadership. We talk about all of these different pieces because ultimately being a business owner is wearing many, many hats. If you go back to the old-fashioned corporation where everyone sits around the boardroom table, you had someone from legal, someone from HR, someone from sales, operations. Most times in your business, unless you've scaled to a very large size, you are wearing many of those hats. You might be HR in the morning and you might be accounting in the afternoon. And well, you're definitely going to be sales unless you have a sales team. And so, a lot of times it's the actual fulfillment that we outsource first. So what we see, someone loves to bake. They love to bake cookies. This is their passion. They start a business selling these cookies. And then they start, managing the business and dealing with the clients. And then they hire someone. And it's not to deal with the people. It's usually to bake the cookies. And then they scale a little more. And quickly, the person who started the business baking the cookies, that loves baking the cookies, bakes 0 cookies. Instead, they become a manager of cookie bakers, a seller of cookies. Really come in with a strategy. Now, if you don't want to bake the cookies and you want to do all those other things, then you are the business owner and it's the freedom to do what you want. But don't always be in a rush to outsource the thing that you enjoy. We've talked about delegation. We've talked about outsourcing. We've talked about these things in the podcast. But time and time again, I see that people have basically grown their business into a business they don't like anymore. They no longer do any of what they enjoy. Instead, they manage a group of people doing what they used to like. Management of people, being a salesperson, doing all these things is a different skill set. And often it's a different human that enjoys doing those things. The nicest thing about being a business owner is that you have the freedom to choose. You have the freedom to choose if you start work at 7 a.m., if you have start work at 1 p.m., whether you want to be the cookie baker or whether you want to be the social media manager. But I think so often we almost get sucked into being an employee in our own business, feeling this sense of, I must do this. I must do that. Then you see somebody online who's like, I made 8 figures in year 3 because this is the way I did it. Guys, if there was a specific secret recipe for an 8-figure business in 3 years, don't you think that everyone would be doing it? I really feel like they would. There is no exact recipe. Now, there is a set of parameters that can be applied to most businesses. Things like how much profit that we have to make. If you're not making profit, you have a hobby. You might like your hobby. You might enjoy your hobby, but it's a hobby. I see a lot of things online about where people are talking, sharing. A lot of times it's like crafting type businesses. So maybe someone is selling shirts, mugs, t-shirts, something along those lines. And they say, well, the shirt costs $5 and, this costs that. And I sold it for this. And they completely ignore their own time. Your time is worth something. It really is. Now, if you love what you're doing and it's more of a hobby, and your goal is to maybe break even, be able to do your hobby and it not cost you anything, that's a very different strategy. So 2025 is the year that we know what our objectives are. We have a strategy on how we're going to hit them. We know how we're going to execute them. And we also know that chances are things are not going to go 100% according to plan, and we're going to have to change things up a little. It's going to be a good year, and we're going to make sure that we plan with the appropriate professionals. So now is the time of year where it is base tax season is around the corner. And I would not be a numbers nerd if I didn't chat with you a little bit about what that means for you and your business. Whether you're in the US or you're in Canada, you should be getting your books done. If they're not up to date, now's the time to do it. So in our bookkeeping service, Path to Profit Bookkeeping, we typically have the books done by about the third week of the month following. So December is typically done by about the third week of January. Ultimately, it really depends on when the statements come out. I always see bookkeeping companies advertising things like, we'll get it done by the 10th or it's free. If your credit card statements do not come out until the 20th of the month, guys, how are they getting it done by the 10th? They're not. So things like this, when your credit, make sure that you round up all your things. Now, if you have done nothing, if you're like, I didn't hire a bookkeeper, I didn't do my books, maybe I got QuickBooks 3 years ago and it's still sitting there. Maybe you have a box under your desk full of receipts. Maybe you don't. Now's the time to get organized, get some time to make sure you can get it all going. If you've been perhaps ignoring your bookkeeper over the holidays or your accountant who's saying, hey, should we talk about this? It's January. Now's the time to dust off those lists. I see so many things kind of from the second week of December, whether it's clients, whether it's onboarding, whether it's the time of year where some things have kind of fallen off over the holidays. Sometimes whether it's the vendor that stopped replying, whether it's customer, now's the time to get out the list and figure out all the things you need to catch up on. In the US, 1099s, the threshold has dropped this year. You will issue more 1099s this year than ever before. It is $600. If you have paid a vendor more than $600 with specific payment methods, you need to issue a 1099. So, that requires specific information, and you're going to need time to get it if you didn't collect it at the time of payment. Most people don't. So, in Canada, now's the time where we need to be wrapping up it. If you have remittances to do, if you are planning for, guys, time buys you opportunity. I know numbers aren't exciting. I know that I love them, but most people don't. And so often I ignore the numbers. I don't really know what it means, so I just leave it alone. I want to be better, but I just haven't got there. All of these things. But now is the time to really lean in. You got a fresh start. Let's wrap up 2024 strong. Keep the profit in your pocket. If you are in Canada and you are looking for a tax accountant, we are happy to provide those services for you. If you are in the US, we have some great recommendations for US tax preparers and accountants we can recommend that do an absolutely wonderful job. Now's the time. Get those connections made, get your books up to date, make a plan for how much you'd like to make this year. Figure out how you're going to get that out of your business without giving a whole bigger chunk than you have to the government. Guys, you will always have to pay the government. There's no way around it. If you used to get a tax refund, maybe you were an employee and you've gotten a tax refund every year, and now you're a new business owner. You do your taxes and you're like, oh my goodness, I didn't get a refund. I owe money. As a business owner, you will almost always owe money unless you're paying in installments up ahead. A lot of people don't. And so that's the only way that you're ultimately going to get, because the only time you get a tax refund is when you've overpaid. As a business owner, most business owners pay at the end. They haven't paid any taxes yet. So there's zero opportunity for you to get a refund. If you'd like to get a refund, if you'd like, some people are like, I use my tax refund as like a savings account. Just pay in installments through the year. Talk to your tax professional about your options. Guys, it's going to be a great 2025. We have some wonderful podcast guests I cannot wait to share with you. we're still diving into more and more topics to help you grow your business, grow your mindset, be profitable, and have a great year. Because you're a business owner and it should be fun, it should be profitable, and we're here for it. Guys, until next time. Don't forget to click subscribe, comment below, and share the episode with a fellow entrepreneur. If you want to take us on the road, we are available everywhere you listen to podcasts. Thanks so much. See you next time.